and welcome to the Over 50 Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin English. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach, and my mission is to help you get into the best shape of your life, regardless of your age, so that you can show up in life as the healthiest, strongest, most vital version of yourself. I want to let you know that if you enjoy this podcast, I have additional free resources over at silveredgefree.com. There you'll find my mini guides on nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle. So feel free to head over there, scroll through the guides, and download anything that looks helpful to you. Today we have another edition of the Coach's Corner, so no guest today, it's just me, and we'll be back next week with our regular interview format. Here's what we're covering in today's episode. I start out by spending a few minutes talking about my new Workout Anywhere guide, and then transition into giving you an update on my client Broc. I haven't done one of these client updates in a while, but Broc just gave up caffeine cold turkey last week, and the results might surprise you. Okay, let's do this. Time to get on with today's show. My new Workout Anywhere guide. A while back, a listener asked me if I had any videos for a band-only workout, and at the time, I didn't. But now I do. So I wrote a Workout Anywhere guide that uses only body weight and a set of bands. I found a set of perfectly serviceable bands on Amazon for about $30, and I created a simple program with 3 workouts. The first workout is a general full body workout. The second one is focused primarily on the posterior chain muscles. And the third workout is more of a conditioning workout. You could use these workouts as your primary workout. Just do the 3 workouts each week. And as you progress, you'd try and increase the band tension a little more each week, potentially even moving up to thicker bands. Or these workouts would be great for when you're on the go and you don't have access to a gym. These workouts could be done anywhere, a bedroom, a hotel room, a living room. They don't require much space at all. Another way you might consider using these workouts is in between your normal strength training days. And this is how I personally use band workouts. On my non-gym days, I'll break out the bands and get a light workout in my office. I get a nice little pump and consider it a sort of active recovery. Anyway, the guide has video demonstrations to all the exercises, and you can download it for free over at silveredgefree.com. So please check it out if you're interested. Client update. Okay, so I haven't done a client update in a while. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with this, Broc is a fellow podcaster and a client of mine. He's the host of the Midlife Mastery podcast, and he's hired me to get into the best shape of his life. So we've agreed to do periodic updates on our respective podcasts. Me from the coach's perspective, and Broc, of course, from the client's perspective. And Broc just did a great update on his podcast, and you can check him out at midlifemasterypodcast.com, and you can listen to his podcast on your favorite podcast app. Anyways, Broc messaged me a couple weeks ago stating that he gave up caffeine cold turkey and that other than a headache and the loss of the will to live, he was doing pretty good. Now, Broc wasn't a casual morning coffee drinker. In fact, he wasn't a coffee drinker at all. He was more of an energy drink guy and was drinking 3 or 4 of these big cans on most days. So I wanted to share some of our call where he discusses why he decided to quit, how he eventually found his will to live again, and the surprising changes that came about after he gave up that much caffeine. Talk to us about how much caffeine you were drinking, what kind of caffeine you were consuming, and what led you to stop.
So actually, I give up caffeine periodically. I give it up more often than I thought I did, and I can talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, so typically have anywhere between 2 and 4 energy drinks a day, typically, like the Monster, the 16-ounce size, whatever. And caffeine is also sort of one of my go-to comfort foods, like a stress food. Like when I start getting stressed, I immediately seek out caffeine, which does not help any situation in any way, other than I feel better about it for a few minutes, even though I no longer have the ability to think or process anymore, just too spun up. But that's kind of where I tend to go. And so on stressful days or days that I'm feeling especially tired, I might have 3-4 energy drinks during the day, especially if I start early. So I tend to wake up early. And so if it just kind of shifts everything. So I can have 2-3 before lunch and then 1 in the afternoon. Now, I don't drink coffee. I'm just weird that way. I don't like hot drinks. And so my go-to caffeine tends to be soda, or I pretty much gave up soda just in favor of energy drinks. Yeah, so I was not feeling good. I mean, that doesn't lead me to feeling good, just overall. I guess the adrenals just spun up all day long. You end up being more tired by the end of the day than otherwise, and you have big dips during the day. And just, stomach kind of a little off and all of that. So just not terrible, but wasn't feeling great. And knowing that this is also something that is not healthy to consume at those levels. I mean, that's, 600 plus milligrams of caffeine a day. So, do the math. Your regular soda has 40 milligrams, so start multiplying that out. That's like a 12-pack plus of soda a day of caffeine. So I don't know what the coffee equivalents are since I don't drink coffee. But anyway, a lot of caffeine. And Kevin, you and I have talked about this offline. I don't do moderation well. So like just the way my brain works, I never been able to, I can quit or I can indulge. But I find whenever I try and just dial back a little bit, I think about it all day long and I end up indulging worse than if I was just having a normal day. For me, that's caffeine. Other people may experience it with ice cream or desserts or whatever, hey, I'm not going to have it, so I don't think about it. And then your brain's just arguing with you all day long about it. So pretty soon you end up just overindulging and I'll make up for it tomorrow, and tomorrow it just gets worse. So anyway, I know people who can do moderation. That's awesome if you can. It's a much better way to go through life.
You're a rip the Band-Aid off kind of guy. I suppose.
Definitely.
Just peel it slowly, right? Just
jump in the pool. Yeah.
Rip it off. Yeah. Jump in the pool. There you go. All right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just got inspired to, like I say, was just kind of feeling cruddy and got inspired to not have it. So one Saturday about a month or so ago, just said, all right, no more. And one of the things I noticed when I started doing that was, Facebook and social media always comes up with, hey, your post from a year ago, 5 years ago. I discovered that over the past 6 years, I've probably quit caffeine in October like 4 times. I don't know what it is about October. My best guess is, that the cool weather's here. I live in Texas, so it's really hot all during the summer. I'm feeling good, wanting to get out more, just feeling healthier. And so, that's one of the things I dial back on. So, yeah.
Yeah. And by dial back, you mean quit cold turkey. So,
well, sure.
Well, so tell us what was that like? What's it like? You've done it now a number of times, so you probably knew what to expect, but somebody who's consuming 600 milligrams of caffeine a day and then just stops the next day, what's that like for you?
Yeah, well, first day actually isn't that bad. So first day, I preemptively took some ibuprofen, Tylenol, whatever, just to stave off the headaches a little bit. Really wasn't that bad. Second day is way more brutal. And at one point I got really nauseous. My son and I were running errands in town. He was driving. By the time we got home, I had to just go lay down and grip the bed and just bad headache. Yeah. And then that's fairly typical for me. First day is okay. Second day is really bad. Now, I think the older I get, the worse it hits me. That's just feels that way. Maybe I just don't remember how bad it was the time previous. And that may be very accurate too. Yeah. So in the past, I have felt like super foggy for about a week, just not thinking real clear, just brain moving a little slower. I think on one post that surfaced back up, I mentioned, that from the movie Over the Hedge, if anyone remembers that, there's Hammy the squirrel, and he was super hyperactive. And at one point in the movie, he finds an energy drink and drinks it, and he starts moving so fast that time stops for him. Like he's just strolling through and everyone's frozen. And I felt like the opposite of that. Like the rest of the world was moving fast and, I was just barely moving. This time around, there was a lot more nausea at night. Like not during the day, but in the middle of the night, if I woke up, go to the bathroom or anything, it just, if I stood up quickly, it would just kind of hit me. Room would spin mildly, not terribly, but enough to let me know it was time to lay back down again and just go back to sleep. So. And then I had these other weird kind of side effects I'd never experienced before. I can't fully attribute them to the caffeine. I don't know what caused them. But Monday night, during the day, my lower back and hips started hurting more and more and more. And I figured it was just from sitting all day. Went home, kind of sat down to relax, and it just hurt to even sit, like just kind of sit bones, lower spine. I figured, well, I'll just go to bed early, lay down. That'll take the pressure off. It'll be great. About 2 a.m., woke up in pain. Hamstrings were just like locked up, couldn't bend over further than my knees. Spent about a half hour in the middle of the night trying to stretch out, took some ibuprofen, went back to bed, was okay. Kind of passed, still, I mean, they were sore, but not like that, not just totally locked up. And I attribute that sort of to the caffeine because that was Monday night and Thursday was the last time I'd done any like weightlifting or anything. So there was nothing to trigger sore muscles. I'd never experienced sore muscles like that. I have no idea how that could be connected to caffeine other than my body just choosing ways to rebel against me. And it passed, and that was it. And it was done. Haven't experienced it since. And, every day as that week progressed, got a little less foggy. And it's one of those things that kind of sucks so bad while you're doing it, you never want to go through it again. And so that's kind of motivation to not drink caffeine for a while. But now my pattern in history shows that at some point I will start back up again because I've quit it several times over the past few years. But
I think a lot of people miss the fact that caffeine is in fact a drug, and it does have highly addictive properties. I mean, you look at people with their morning coffee ritual, that's pretty sacred time, and it's a tough thing to give up. And you hear, it's a common thing. Oh, if I give up caffeine, I'm going to have this headache. And now you were drinking an extreme amount. And so you had kind of these extreme reactions to giving it up. Now, how long all told? Was that a week? Was that 2 weeks before you kind of balanced back out? How long did that take?
Yeah, less than a week. I mean, that was
less than a
really...
week. Okay. So in under a week, you're back to, well, I was going to say back to baseline or back to normal, but in fact, you weren't. What happened? What did you notice as a result of not drinking caffeine? You and I talked about this offline a little bit, but I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I noticed my energy is higher. And so if you just kind of pictured a chart, 0 to 100, if my normal energy is, if 100 is normal energy, on caffeine, it might go up to 120 and then it crashes down to, 60. And so these spikes and falls, and while I don't have quite as much as like when you first get the caffeine, like in the morning, energy is just steady throughout the day and without kind of the spikes and crashes. And so overall, I feel like it's higher levels of energy and just general mood, general optimism. Now, I'm a pretty optimistic guy anyway, but I find myself less irritated by stupid things. Traffic's always going to be there. It's always going to be painful to drive through. And I find that, just silly stuff like that doesn't bother me as much anymore without the caffeine. And also another side effect that, so more energy, better overall mood, better, not only overall mood, like my wife and kids are happy, I guess, that I'm in a better mood, but also just almost less cynicism and pessimism. So maybe even more like self-confidence, just because not having kind of that negativity or down mood or whatever. And also another kind of odd side effect that I hadn't experienced before, noticed it this time, was that I dropped about 6 pounds in 3 weeks without really changing a lot of other stuff. And, my best attribution to that, not a doctor, not even close, but is just that, if caffeine was maybe keeping cortisol and those other stress hormones all spun up, I was just retaining weight because of that. And as soon as that was all able to subside, body was able to release some weight. Best guess, because it kind of, dropped those 5-6 pounds and then stopped. So it's not like I'm still losing weight, but definitely noticed it without really doing any other changes that would change the overall daily calories or anything. In fact, I was probably even exercising less during that week or two.
Yeah, that's a pretty good side benefit there, side effect of dropping that caffeine. And what about your sleep? Did this have an impact on your sleep at all?
Yeah, so sleep is definitely much better. I find myself, now I'm one who, I don't typically sleep all that great anyway. I've never been a great sleeper, don't really like sleep that much. Or at least I don't like spending time in bed. I'd rather be up doing something. And so often up in the middle of the night, like if I wake up, my brain gets spun up. It could be a couple hours. And maybe other people experience that. I don't know. But I noticed sleeping through the night better, according to my watch and all the trackers that we're all wired to these days. I'm getting more deep sleep during the night. So even The overall time may not have shifted much. I think it has gotten a little bit longer, but the quality of sleep within that time is a lot better. And it's much more straight through versus wake up, be up for a little while, go back to sleep, wake up, be up for a little while, go back to sleep. So that's been a pretty nice side benefit too. And of course, as I understand, there's connections between sleep and weight loss. So maybe it's just sleeping better caused me to drop those couple of pounds as well. I mean, there's a lot of factors I'm guessing here. So I can't swear that if anyone out there gives up caffeine, they will experience everything that I experience. This is just kind of my experience this time. And like I say, I've given it up before and haven't necessarily noticed some of those side effects, good and bad, before. So
yeah, that's fantastic. And I love that you found that you kind of have this sense that you're sleeping better, but your sleep quality is getting better. But that specifically you mentioned that your deep sleep is improved. And of course, that affects a whole host of things, right? It's going to affect your muscle building capability. It's going to affect all of your cellular repair. It's going to affect your hunger regulating hormones positively. So yeah, there's a whole cascade of wonderful effects that comes from improving specifically those two phases of sleep, the REM and deep phases of sleep. So that's fantastic. You got this more stable energy, stable, improved mood, feeling a little more upbeat and positive. You're sleeping better. You're losing weight. So all of these are very, very positive things. And while we want to be careful about causality, they're certainly positively correlated with the dropping the caffeine here. And in your case, it was a lot. So when you drop caffeine, what are you replacing that with?
For the most part, just water. And so I haven't gone to, like I say, I used to drink a lot of soda and then switched to energy drinks. And when I dropped those, I didn't go back to soda. I mean, one of the things I was wanting to get rid of is just the artificial sweeteners and kind of all the chemicals that go in that. I mean, I already know like NutraSweet and I do not get along well. I get headaches from it. It affects me. Sucralose, I do better with, and that's typically the sweetener in a lot of the energy drinks I had. But even then, I don't know. It's without the caffeine that there's, I don't know. That was more like that came with the caffeine versus that's what I was seeking, if that makes any sense at all. So yeah, really just kind of replaced it with water. I like sparkling water and flavored sparkling water and that. And, yeah. So, I mean, that's a really boring replacement. Like, I mean, I feel like they always tell you to, you go find something that's kind of like what you had. And this time I have not. I just kind of let it all go away.
Well, that's a very healthy replacement, though, especially if that causes you to increase your water intake daily, that would have positive health benefits as well. And yeah, it may be boring, but I can't think of a better replacement for artificially flavored and sweetened energy drinks than just good old-fashioned water or sparkling water. So yeah, that's great. And what is your outlook? What do you think is going to happen here, say after the holidays or when the weather gets warmer? Do you have a long-term plan for staying where you are now? Or because in the past, obviously, you've quit caffeine completely and come back to it multiple times. What do you see in the future here?
Yeah. So, I mean, the answer that I personally love is that I never have use for it ever again. And we're all good and never go back to it. But when I look back on the past, what generally triggers, it sounds so dramatic, but generally where I start having it again is one of two things, either for whatever reason needing to go without much sleep. So, traveling or just up way later than normal, or allergies. Here every now and then, once or twice a year, I get just allergies that knock me out. Can't think, super foggy, and the caffeine will actually cut through that a little bit. And so that tends to be when, have one, feel better. Okay, have one the next day, feel better. And then, the habit's reformed,
Yeah.
we just string a few days together. So, and like I say, if I were wired differently, it would be the go on, little moderation, taper back off. And if I catch it before forming the habit, then that's great. But kind of once it's broken through, once I've given myself permission to, then that's a little more of a challenge for me. And so I know other people are wired differently and would probably do much better at the moderation, and bless them, because that's probably a much saner path.
That was a lot of caffeine, right? So I can certainly see you're going to have a good amount of benefits from just quitting that.
Yeah. And if you think about, what's 16 ounces times 4, 48? So that's 48 ounces that I effectively replaced with water. So if we talk about, the benefits of drinking water, again, that's kind of feeding into the more sleep, better sleep, all of that. I don't know that any one thing would have brought those benefits, but kind of putting them all together, they all feed into each other very nicely. At least, like I say, that's kind of my best guess around some of that stuff. And yeah, in fact, one of the things it does now, giving it up does feel wretched. I will say that. And I can think of times in the past when I've given up to stand out. One was being jet lagged in another country, like really easy to give up because I felt so horrible that, the pain of no caffeine just didn't matter. Like it just, and the other time was I had a really bad stomach bug and went a day without really drinking anything. And like that, at that point, I was like, well, I've suffered the hardest part here. I might as well just keep not drinking it. I mean, so, if you think about, well, if you're really sick and can't get out of bed and like, that's the good point to give it up. I mean, that if you're feeling that wretched that you're not going to feel worse, that's kind of been when it's been easier before when I felt bad otherwise. So I knew that just having caffeine wouldn't be a quick cure for it. That made it easier. And this time it was more just kind of the white knuckle it out.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think you're also, to your point, you got rid of a lot of crap, right? You got rid of artificial colors, you got rid of artificial flavors, you got rid of artificial sweeteners, none of which are serving you from a nutritional point of view. So,
right.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a whole host of things that work together to improve your health when you do that. Now, if somebody's listening to this and they're in the same boat as you, especially if they're in that, say, diet soda or energy drink and they're consuming large amounts of this, what's your advice? Is your advice just go for it, rip the Band-Aid? Or if a friend of yours said, hey, man, I really like your story here. I like the outcome of that, but I don't know if I could give it up. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, it's funny. We almost never talk about giving up caffeine. There's all kinds of things we talk about giving up, but this one doesn't really receive as much attention. And I don't know if it's just because caffeine is so ubiquitous at, any point of the day that, we just don't notice it that much. But, well, I mean, first off, know yourself. Like my wife is very good at moderation. She's able to go, I'll just have this one treat soda at the end of the day or whatever if she's been eating well all day. She's great at that. I just cannot do that. And if you can do that, great. Dial it back, however that works. For me, it was more getting into the mindset that this is going to suck. And that's not a pessimistic sort of thing. That's just the acknowledging that when it feels bad, it's working. Like preemptive headache medicine, that worked for me. Lots of water, that works for me. Just timing it. Like I wouldn't do that right 2 days before heading into a really big important meeting or presentation, in that way, kind of like I timed it over a weekend. And so I knew I'd be through the worst of it before I got back to work. That for me is helpful. If you can time it over holidays, that's even greater, but maybe not. Again, if you're around family, being really cranky may not be the time to do it. A forewarning family is probably helpful. Spouse and kids. Maybe a little extra cranky for a few days. Yeah, and other than that, it was really just mostly mindset. And I don't know what triggered it this time in me to just say, no, this is it. It's done. But I know once I'm in that mindset, then I'm very comfortable with just, that's it. This is done. Kind of that foregone conclusion that you were talking about. Like, no, I've made the decision and we'll just go forward with it. But yeah, so I don't know. And hopefully they're consuming less caffeine, so it's a much easier thing for them to do. When I was younger, it was much easier to give up caffeine, without anything. In fact, I remember once doing it just for a year. I just for 1 year, I'll give it up. And I was able to do that because it was hooked to that kind of that foregone decision, on this day, I'm not drinking it. And, next New Year's, yeah, we'll see where we go. That may be helpful for some too, just because I know we do a lot of give things up for a month sort of thing. And just to get clear of it. And that can be freeing knowing that it's not forever. You can come back to it and maybe have a healthier relationship with it. But anyway, so that's just some thoughts out there for that, Kevin.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I think that's very insightful. And for anybody who's consuming large amounts of caffeine, you might want to consider your behaviors, consider the health consequences. And if you've never quit before, I would certainly encourage either some sort of a taper down to very little or no, or like Broc, just grab the bull by the horns and go for it and see how your body responds. Give yourself 30, 60 days with that and see if you notice health benefits. So I'm a big proponent of that sort of self-experimentation. And while we don't hear about people giving up caffeine very often, it's very, very much culturally accepted. And in fact, it's touted to have certain health benefits, which is true. When we start to getting into individual components that make up caffeine, we can come up with some reasons why it could be, in fact, beneficial for us. But in the long run, if you're over-consuming caffeine, it would be a good idea to greatly reduce or even eliminate it for a while and just see how you feel. And then the other thing I think that you probably found as well, but when I stop doing caffeine and start again, I'm shocked at how much of an effect it has on me. I don't really notice because it's my baseline. Every morning I get up, I have a little coffee, and I suppose I get a little jolt from it, but I don't even realize it now. But if I stop for a month and start again, it's always, it's surprising to me how potent caffeine really is. I don't know if you found that to be the case in your self-experimentation.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely have, and I notice that passes fairly quickly within a few days, you start.
Oh yeah, no, you go right back to baseline very quickly. Yeah. But those first couple of days, you're like, wow, this is good stuff.
Yeah. And that kind of, I think, leads to kind of the feeling like, oh, I have to have my morning cup of coffee, or I have to have my morning caffeine, because we're kind of so low at that point. So one of the things I notice is when I am off caffeine, it kind of normalizes. So I wake up with more energy. Like I don't need that jolt to get going. I already kind of feel like I did before after the caffeine. So, kind of, I guess once it clears the system, it's not like you're going to wake up feeling like you normally do. that you may actually not feel like you need it after that. And like I say, I'm kind of weird going to the all or nothing extreme, and may go back to it. History would say at some point I will go back to caffeine, but definitely enjoying the benefits right now.
Well, great. Yeah, I encourage you, obviously, as your coach, to keep it up. I think that's fantastic. You're experiencing great health benefits, and you don't seem to be having any ill effects from its absence right now. Like you said, you've got your energy, which is why we normally drink it. Now, you had mentioned that's kind of your emotional go-to as well. So trying to develop other habits when those things trigger. And then, of course, your other triggers, I think you mentioned, were allergies, and if you're traveling or extremely fatigued, but have to deal with those as they come up. But yeah, for now, I think that's fantastic. And who wouldn't want to have improved mood and more energy and better sleep?
Yeah, and it all goes together nicely.
Okay, that's our show for today, folks. I'll put links to everything we talked about in the show notes, and you can find that over at silveredgefitness.com/episode 93. And don't forget to check out silveredgefree.com for more great resources on how to live your healthiest, strongest life after age 50. In the meantime, I'd love to hear from you. You can always leave a comment on this episode page, or feel free to email me with any comments or questions from today's show. You can send emails to coach@silveredgefitness.com. I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I'll be back next week with my regular interview format, but that's it for today. So until next time, stay strong.